call this meeting to order. We will have the pledge flag led by John Hall.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, please silence your cell phones. And is anybody interested in a motion to approve the agenda?
Move to approve.
Motion?
I'm assuming there were no amendments. I didn't see any.
Not today.
Yes, motion to approve.
I'll second that. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Passes. Consent agenda.
Move the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the consent agenda. Any discussion or anybody want anything pulled off? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Passes. Public appearances. Well, none so far. Property services, either Mandy or John, I assume. That is John in the corner, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I have before you consideration of November 24th, 2020 at 10 a.m. for the public hearing of the comprehensive plan that we've been working on in the last couple of years. Originally, the plan was to have this resolved and adopted and in place last spring, but due to the COVID and pandemic and the additional protections that we have to put in place, the planned open house for April was canceled. And we've been just kind of working through with SRF over the last couple of months to finalize the document. At this point, we feel that we need to move forward with the adoption and have a new comp plan in place. With that being said, because of the uniqueness of not having a true open house, we have looked at alternatives for publication for individuals to let them know that it is in place. As far as what those are, we'll be doing a press release that we have prepared already. There'll be a Facebook announcement that they can view the comp plan at the SRF website, and they can also submit comments directly to our SRF. That was a concern in the past, that the comments wouldn't be relayed correctly, so that's an option that they can send them right to SRF, and then they'll be incorporated into the presentation. And then all of the P&Z agenda list individuals will be notified of the comp plan, and also it'll be posted on our website. So today I'm just asking for the placement of November 24th at 10 a.m. for the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
I mean, Mr. Chair, so, Mandy, are you pleased with the progress of this plan and where it will take us?
Based on the feedback we received from residents over the last couple of years from the open houses that we did have, I think it was incorporated along with the amendments to the goals and policies that were proposed in the plan. I think that will lead us into the future, yes.
So is there going to actually be many changes?
Not really. There'll be some changes, of course. The demographics will all be updated to current statistics for 2020, well, between 2018 and some 2020 statistics with it. That was the biggest change that we'll see. Based on the feedback, I think there's just some uncertainty of residents, but really there isn't a lot changing as far as goals. What the feedback we did receive was consistent with the goals. It's just more of an education piece for our residents to understand that there are opportunities for home occupation businesses outside the city limits.
I will add, Mr. Chair, that there is an extensive transportation section that we did include that does include the turnback discussion that we had probably a year ago regarding possible turnback of county roads to townships and other jurisdictions as well. So that is included in the plan as well. And again, it's just a plan. It's doesn't bind the county board to anything, but it's serves the purpose of being a guide and roadmap for the future.
Okay. More questions?
Well, and if I could,
Yes,
Mr.
Jack.
Chair, Mandy, thank you. I know that cities, North Mankato, St. Peter, have their plans as well. So the whole Nicollet County plan has to have some relation with our cities, correct?
It does. It encourages, of course, communication between the cities and the county, which we have a good rapport with our cities when it comes to discussion for development purposes with it. As far as the changes or impacts to the cities, the cities will not see anything or feel anything
Right.
because our development has basically maintained the same type of concepts.
But as cities grow, then those
Mhm.
considerations with the county township land need to be addressed in those conversations.
Correct, and the way the current land use plan is with what's in place now and what is proposed, the cities will not have to deal with as many issues as they annex new property in, as far as, we do have setbacks for our feedlots to ensure that they are properly placed away from the city limits, commercial businesses that are in appropriate zoning districts, so when the cities do annex in, they're basically annexing in vacant land, which will allow them to properly plan for their future growth.
And on that same note, oh, go ahead, Marie.
Well, I was just gonna reiterate the fact that representatives from the city of North Mankato, the city of St. Peter, township representatives, planning and zoning representatives all sat, and public representatives all
Mhm.
sat on the original planning committee for this project.
Correct.
You and I and others, we get a lot of calls from people in regards to bluff development and what have you, and somewhat more restriction, somewhat less. Is that saying it probably pretty realistically?
I would say that's correct.
Yeah. But there isn't a big change in that part of this,
The comp plan is used as a tool for guidance.
right?
And you take that information then and you put it into the zoning ordinance where you have the specific standards with it. There is a section within the comp plan that addresses some of our natural resources and our concerns, and specifically the bluffs and the issues that we've been having the last 5 to 10 years. Part of it is our historical rainfalls have been different. They're much more intense, and they've created a lot of issues with it. There has been some conversations about potentially increasing some of those setbacks, but that's step 2 of the process. The first step is looking at the comp plan and putting that in place, so then we would create a guide to where the zoning ordinance will go into play as far as those requirements are in place.
Okay.
More questions for Mandy?
So do we need a motion on this to,
Yes.
We have a
okay, oh, that's right.
No motion and a second.
Okay, ready to vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thanks.
Passes.
Thanks, Mandy.
Okay. Mr. Hummel.
Good morning. I have 4 requests for your consideration today. The first item is the request of applicant MR Paving and Excavating and landowner Doris Gimmer for a 3-year review of a conditional use permit to mine, crush, and process gravel, shale, and clay. The site is located in Cortland Township and is zoned conservancy. The mine was originally permitted in 1987 and sits adjacent to the Valley Demo landfill site. Over the past 3 years, 84,770 tons of material have been removed from the mine. The facility does have a reclamation plan and a valid bond on file. There were no public comments received during the hearing and no public testimony during the hearing. After due consideration, the commission voted unanimously to recommend approval of the request. Mr. Chair, staff seeks a motion to approve the request with the attached findings of fact, sir.
Kemp will make the motion.
We have a motion in a couple seconds. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Passes.
The second item is the request of applicant MR Paving and Excavating and landowner Tim Cohn for a 3-year review of a conditional use permit to mine, crush, and stockpile gravel. This site is also located in Cortland Township. This site is zoned a mix of agricultural preservation and conservancy. The mine was permitted as a temporary borrow pit in 1971 and as a conditional use in 1977. The mine has been idle for many years now. In 2014, the applicant renewed the mining permit in anticipation of the Highway 14 expansion project. The site has remained idle for the last 6 years with no material being removed. The facility does have a reclamation plan on process, however, they do not have a bond as no mining is currently going on. There are no public comments and no public testimony. The commission voted unanimously to recommend approval of the request, sir. Mr. Chair, staff seeks a motion to approve the request and the attached findings of fact.
I'll make the motion.
We have a motion and a second. That's the first question. Where is this located actually?
This is located just east of the city of Cortland.
Okay,
Excuse me, just west of the city of
right,
Cortland.
right. There's a bunch of trees around it and there's some
There is, yep,
water.
and there's water in the center of it. yes.
Okay. Any other questions? All in favor,
say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No, passes.
The third item is a request of applicant Valley Asphalt and landowner New Ulm Corsite Quarries. This site is located in Cortland Township again. This site is zoned limited industry. The plant was constructed in 1976 and is considered by industry standards to be a small permanent facility. The applicant has operated the facility for the last 23 years. Over the last 3 years, the plant has produced 200,000 and 205,000 tons of bituminous material. The property has a reclamation plan and a valid bond on file. Again, there were no public comments or public testimony. The commission voted unanimously to recommend approval of the request. We seek a motion to approve the request and the attached findings of fact, sir.
I'll move it.
Motion? Is that a second, Terry?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No, passes.
The fourth and last item I have for you is the request of applicant and landowner Geldner Brothers Sand and Gravel LLC. This site is located in Lake Prairie Township. It is owned conservancy. The mine was originally permitted in 1988. For the last 3 years, the mine has remained idle with no material being removed. The facility does have a reclamation plan and a valid bond on file. There is no public testimony and no public comments. Again, the commission voted unanimously to recommend approval of the request. Mr. Chair, we seek a motion to approve the request and attach findings of fact.
Was that a question or a motion?
Comment. I need to recuse myself from
Okay.
this one.
Motion from Terry,
Second.
second. Denny? Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No, passes.
Mr.
Thank you.
Chair,
Thank
Oh,
you.
yes, Jack.
if you don't mind.
I don't mind.
Thanks, John, for these reports. How are we doing, how does the county do on gravel tax from these types of operations in comparison to our neighbors, say in the Seward County?
That would probably be a question for Jackie.
When she gets here, then we'll
Yep.
ask her if she's got the
Our
information.
department doesn't get involved in the gravel tax much, so,
Thank you.
yes.
Thank you, John. Do you want to ask Jackie at this time, or wait, Jack?
Well, she's up anyway.
Well, if she's prepared, she's usually got that stuff right on the tip of her tongue.
I don't think I have that information. Sorry, Jack. I can get you that information,
Thank you.
possibly after the meeting then.
Yeah, I can't recall what budget, but I know we're definitely less than LeSueur County.
Right.
I don't know what Brown and Brewer do, but,
Sewer counties might be dropping.
right. It used to be a lot.
Dropping the price or the quantity?
The amount.
My German plant was shut down.
Oh, okay.
That's where so much of their revenue is from.
So do a lot of counties have an aggregate tax? Okay, welcome, Jackie.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. So I have a election update of what we're doing now and have been doing and what we got going for the next 7 days.
Not that you're counting.
I have quite a few things that I was just going to go through some stats, some processes that we're doing, and some other things. So while I'm going through it, feel free to stop and ask me questions as we go. First thing I want to give you are some stats of some things and how many people have voted and where we're at. So in Nicollet County, we have 20,000 registered voters. 12,000 of those registered voters have either requested an AB or are getting a mail ballot absentee or a mail ballot because they live in a mail ballot precinct. So that's 60% of all voters in Nicollet County received some sort of ballot either by request or a mail ballot precinct. So the numbers that we're watching closely and is important in my office is how many have been returned, because now that we're getting down to crunch time. So we have 8,000 ballots roughly that have been returned to us and processed. So that's about 66% of the absentee ballots have been returned to us. We only have 7 days left, so I feel like we have a substantial amount out. Now, if I break that down even further, the cities, North Mankato and St. Peter, those people that have requested absentee ballots, they've returned, they're about 75%. So we're getting really good on those, and we're getting mail all this week. So I feel real comfortable. We're in a really good spot on them. Our mail ballot precincts are kind of down at this point. I don't know that I've ever tracked it as closely as I have this year, so I don't know if that's typical or not, but we're about at 56% of returned for our mail ballot precincts. So we have quite a few of those that need to come back in. So we actually have about 4,000 potential ballots to come in yet. So we still have quite a bit of work in front of us. So the countdown is good, but it also gives you a little bit of anxiety knowing that we have that much work to do in a really short period of time. Some other stats about in-person voting. So we've been using the boardroom for in-person voting. It's been going really well. We've processed about 1,500 people in person here at the courthouse. And that does not include all the people that have come and dropped off their ballot versus mailing it. So the traffic in the courthouse here has been, a couple thousand people for sure. We don't track how many dropped off their ballots versus mailing them. And that's obviously been increasing every single day. So we're looking at least 100 voters per day the last few days, and anticipating that for this week and Monday. So Monday at 5 o'clock is when absentee voting ends. So then on election day, the only people that are voting here are mail ballot precincts. So they can still come in here and vote using their envelopes and voting like a mail ballot. It's just they're doing it in person basically, but they still use their envelopes. People can drop off on Monday up till 3 o'clock of an absentee ballot. So on election day, it will look a little bit different. People can drop off at till 3 o'clock, or mail ballot precincts can vote here. If you're from St. Peter, North Mankato, or Nicollet or Cortland, you'll have to vote at your polling place on election day. So mail ballots, and we'll take mail ballots up through 8 o'clock on election day because we'll be open just like a regular poll place. The post office on election day, I've been in contact with them, and I'm going to continue coordinating with them. They'll be delivering ballots all day here. We're going to they will make several runs here to the courthouse on election day as they get them, as well as sometimes the Mankato Processing Center will call us when they have ballots. That will have staff that will just go over and grab those ballots to staff and transport them back. So there's been way more communication with the post office than we've ever had on getting those ballots in by election night. We are also open this Saturday from 10 to 3. This room will be open for voting here this Saturday, and we'll have staff in the entryway as well as anybody that wants to drop off in the parking lot. We'll have staff that can go out and get their ballot or drop off if they come in the atrium area and drop off, and staff that will be in here from 10 to 3. I also, because of the concern with mail ballots being returned, especially on the west end of the county, is kind of a drive-in. So on Saturday, I've organized, the city of Lafayette is graciously letting us use their city hall building, and I'll have 2 staff out there from 9 to noon for people on any precinct that can drop off their ballot. Now, that was just organized yesterday. We started working on it last week and then organized. So we are going to be pushing that out with a news release, also social media, and I'm going to contact all the township clerks on that too, that if they can get that out. It's kind of late notice, but I kind of wanted to wait to see what our numbers were looking like and where we needed that extra push for people to get their ballots into us. So hopefully we can get some people in the west end of the county can feel a little bit more served, that they can come on Saturday from 9 to noon and drop those ballots off, and we'll get them back here. Any questions so far on that part?
Yes, Terry.
Yeah.
Well, first I would say, well done, you must all be exhausted. But thank you for all those options, and Martha, Sally, and I came in yesterday to vote.
Oh, good.
It was very smooth. And,
Good.
just a fantastic service. Just a couple of questions. So we might expect, at least in a normal year, about 8,000 people to vote on election day in person. Is that, if we have 20,000, but we have 12,000 out?
Right, I would say roughly 40% of the registered voters in those precincts is what they can expect at the poll places, is what I've kind of shaken that down with the cities. So I'd say about 40% of their registered voters will probably show up in the cities for voting.
And everything, you know, crossing fingers, knocking on wood, in terms of election judges, safety of election sites, feel pretty good.
Yep. This year, the Secretary of State's office did a big push on election judges, which was really, really, really helpful. They've never helped in the election judge process before, so now they put a big push out there because a lot of our election judges are older people, and some of them just not wanting to work in the public. And we probably have gotten, in fact, we've gotten more than actually needed. So election judges, we had to prepare for election judges on election day and backup election judges on election day in case those election judges were to fall sick. And so we have more than enough trained, and then excess. In fact, I just received an email from Blue Earth County too, saying that they have excess. So if we needed any election judges, because you can serve anywhere, you don't have to serve in your precinct, in your county, you can serve anywhere. So they had extra judges too. They were offering for us, and we don't really need them either. But just in case something were to fall, we have plenty of trained judges, in my opinion.
I guess I would just reiterate, if I might.
Yes,
just
sir.
my comment would be similar to my first. As you see some, let's say, hiccups around the nation, it's tremendously gratifying and comforting, at least in my view, with the wonderful work you all have done. It feels like you've done all the contingency planning and everything from the drive up to the Saturday to everything you've done is just fantastic.
Thank you. There's been a lot of moving parts as this goes on. So that kind of goes into what my next was going to talk about. So last Tuesday, starting after business day on Tuesday, the next moving part came into play, saying that we can now start to process those absentee ballots. We can start opening those up. So now not only do we have in-person voting, we have ballot drop-off. I have staff in our election room out in our hallway there, in that election room, processing ballots that are coming in and going through ballot board and getting them accepted. And now I have another group of people in another conference room opening, counting ballots, making sure that it's the correct ballot, and then finally inserting them into the machine. That process, opening ballots, sounds very simple, like open them up, put them in the counter, not very hard. But the process is very much a check and balance system as we go on. One person's opening the outside envelope, counting, making sure that it's the right precinct. Two other election judges are opening secrecy envelopes, verifying they're the right precinct, counting, making sure we got the right number, initialing those ballots, and two people do that, and then one person's feeding them in. So it's a process to get 1,000 done in a day is a lot. So we still have quite a few out there. I'm hopeful. We have really high mail and a lot of traffic this week, so we can get wrapped up. The reason we want to stay on track is because I don't want ballots to start backing up. And on election day, I have so much to process yet. So we need to keep up on that. So on election day, we're caught up to who are voting. So there's a ton of things that are going on behind the scenes. I did track an absentee ballot from the beginning to the end, how many times it gets touched, from the beginning of putting an application in to getting it mailed out to receiving it back in, the whole ballot board process, and then processing it into the ballot counter. And it's about 20 touches 20 checks and balances before it gets into the ballot box to count. So the number one thing that I get from all of our staff that we're training, our additional staff, is I can't believe all the extra work and all the checks and balances that go on behind the scenes. And if the public actually knew this, I think there would be a lot more comfort into it. I mean, it's a lot of extra work behind the scenes on that. But I was kind of, when I actually sat down and thought about how many times is that ballot touched, 20 times is a lot of times. by 12,000 ballots. So, I mean, that's a lot of handiwork.
Does that include the post office and?
I did not include what the post office does. That just includes us dropping it into the mail, us getting it back then, or however it gets back to us.
And so I don't forget, I think the whole board here agrees with Terry's positive comments.
I'd like to make a couple of positive.
Yes, you could,
comments,
Jack.
too, if you don't mind.
You go right ahead. You're good at that.
And Jackie, thank you for educating us again in this year of tumult. But I wanted to let you know that I trust Nicollet County's voting integrity and voting security. And I wanted to tell you what I wrote for you and your people that we could convey to our Nicollet County voters, if you'll allow me the time.
Sure.
My fellow commissioners, I've had several visits with the election office here in Nicollet County this election cycle. And like Commissioner said before, I want to thank you for all the tireless work that you folks have put it into in protecting the integrity and the security of our citizens' votes during this pandemic. A lot of people are voting ahead of time because they want to avoid the virus. This happens despite what seems to be an endless stream of misinformation from Washington. I can't believe I have to say that, but with the huge influx of voting, what I expect is strain on our election officials and threats through what is perceived by many as voter intimidation, and the current occupant of the White House threatening to send federal agents across the country. I'm concerned that our election officials may be overwhelmed. It is reassuring to know, after visiting with our county attorney, that Minnesota law prohibits any kind of law enforcement or federal agents at Minnesota polls unless they're called by our county election officials. But unfortunately, these mischaracterizations about mail-in ballots or casting absentee ballots seem to be persisting and seem to be sowing mistrust and division that we don't need, and it needs to stop. As our county election officials continue to assist voters, as you have been since September 23rd or
18th.
September 19th, ahead of the November election, and as your poll workers and judges prepare for the day-long event on November 3rd, I'd like to join our fellow commissioners in assuring that our citizens that your vote is going to be counted, and fairly and honestly. And so my point here is to say, I'd like to ask the folks of Nicollet County not to reshare the misinformation that seems to be coming from all areas, but rather to share our values, to make people feel comfortable that every vote counts and that every vote is going to be counted. And that is my message, fellow commissioners, of positivity about the county election process, how it has served our residents in the past, how it's serving our residents today, and God willing, how it will serve our residents into the future. And so that's a thank you, Jackie, to you and your workers and your volunteers. And I would just say, vote with confidence instead of fear.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jack.
Mr. Chair, can I ask Jackie a question?
Sure.
So, in years past, usually I sit at home and go on the Secretary of State's website, and usually by 10:30 or so, you have everything entered on 100% votes entered there. That won't happen this year.
So
because
yeah,
it's
election.
7 days. Are you gonna enter votes that come in after that daily, or does it all get entered a week later?
Okay, so election night is gonna look quite a bit different. And I kinda wanna give you all a heads up on that as well. So, typically what we've done is, we haven't had this amount of absentee, and by 8 o'clock, we are done, ready to upload our mail ballots, and then, get those numbers are typically ones that we get out right away because we're right on top of those. And then as the precincts come in, those go out too. So with the way it's set up currently, that you have to have it postmarked by the 3rd, and then you have 7 days to count. So on election night, we are to have everything processed that we have in this building. So that means every voter that comes in, every mail piece that comes in, we will probably still be getting a pile of mail by 6 o'clock. I know in the primary they came at 6 o'clock with another chunk of mail. So that mail takes time to process. So that's what makes me a little bit nervous. So depending on that volume, everything that's in our building by 8 o'clock has to be processed, has to be counted. That means it has to go through ballot board, it has to then be opened, has to go through the machine. So our absentee counter in that will be delayed. So we'll be processing everything that we have. As soon as that's done, we close those polls, upload that to the state. My hope is that we'll do that as soon as we possibly can, but it also is going to depend on the amount of mail. And like I said, we've never had mail deliveries that late. They've delivered mail in the morning, that's it. So we could get all that processed. But now with them being the post office is being very proactive about getting us those ballots, they're going to be coming more often with those. So election night is going to be later. You're going to see results later, but what you see then is going to be what we have so far. And then we are to report the next morning and every day after to the Secretary of State's office how many outstanding absentees are still out there. So they can get a feel for, so it's more, I believe, for media to start calling races on their own. To say so-and-so's winning by 1,000 ballots, and we know there's only 300 outstanding. So even if they all, so you're going to start see probably media projecting those winners. Obviously, those are just projections, and that's what the media does. But that's why we're telling we have to report how many outstanding ballots are out there. So then those 7 days after, we have the choice to update those every day or at the end of that 7 days. I'm not positive how we're doing that exactly yet, to be honest. I need to get a feel from that, and we are getting daily directions from the Secretary of State's office on that. So I would anticipate a little more going out, but we do have that choice of at the end of 7 or, every other day. I anticipate we will probably do it every day is probably going to be the best choice, but that will be determined yet on exactly how we do that. Like I said, there's been so many moving parts on this, as well as many decisions are coming at different times, and we're getting directions as we go on this election. So that's what election night will look like. So it's going to look quite a bit different than what you normally see, but we will eventually get those in and updated. And so by the time we go home, everything in this building is processed at the end of the night or early morning, whatever that may be.
So I'll have to stay up later than 10:30.
You're gonna have to stay up later than 10:30, but I mean, if we work really, really hard, maybe I'd like to make it by 10, but we'll see.
You need
Go ahead.
cots in the EOC for you to
Yeah.
keep your
Yeah.
team rested.
Yeah. I think the latest we've ever been here on a regular election years ago, we had a computer, was like 3:30 in the morning, but
Wow.
yeah.
Terry,
so-
you had a question?
I do, I just wanna make sure, Jackie, that I'm understanding.
Yep.
The way in which this year is different. I understand it might be different in terms of volume,
Mm-hmm.
and the like, but in past years, were ballots that were postmarked by November 3rd counted after November 3rd?
No. So the law always read that your ballot has to be here by 8 o'clock.
Right.
Anything that came in the next day, it was rejected in the system, as well as they get a letter saying your ballot was received after the election day. We have a process with that. So this is what's new this year, right now.
Was that very many?
No.
A couple dozen or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just curious.
No.
If I could follow up then, Jackie, 'cause
Mhm.
enough of election geek to be following this nationally. What the courts have been saying about beyond election day, and I know there was just a ruling yesterday
Yep.
by the Supreme Court, but in Minnesota, as we sit here today,
As we sit here today, it is 7 days postmark. Now, there is litigation out there for that, so that could come at, I don't have a, we've been notified by the Secretary of State that the litigation, I think it's in the Court of Appeals today, and they don't really know the timing on when that ruling will happen. So, as we sit today, it's postmarked. Now, that could change, so then that changes my election night, and that changes how many times we upload those results. So when I talk about lots of moving parts, there's been lots of different litigations going on as we've gone through this entire process, from the witness to many things like that. So that's what's different about this election.
so if I might
Yes,
just
Terry.
follow it. So the sense I've had from the post office is, or nationally, is get your ballot postmarked by the 27th
Today.
if you really want to feel assured that it's going to be there by the 3rd.
Yeah. Yes. Now, I've had a lot of people call our office wanting to know, when should I mail your ballot? When should I mail my ballot? And currently, I have to say, I can't say you need to mail it by the 20th or you need to mail it by the 27th, because that's not the law. So I'm in a position for my office and my staff, we say the statute and the law is you can have it postmarked by the 3rd, because that's what it is right now. Now, I can't give advice. Now, the post office can give advice and say, hey, this is a good idea, but this isn't going to come from my office to say it's a good idea, because my office has to follow the statute or the rules or the laws. So, so with that being said, I want to say that I have used a lot of Michelle's, our county attorney's, time with a lot of issues that have been going on, from direct balloting, or from balloting to drop-offs to litigation issues to many issues that are going on. I've worked with her on many things, and I just want to thank Michelle's office for being so generous and having the time and willingness to have those conversations, because I need to be on the same page as our county attorney, as well as the county attorney needs to know what we're getting from the Secretary of State's office. So we need to work together. Many counties probably don't have that kind of relationship with their county attorneys, but I've really appreciated our county attorney's time on this, because I've bent her ear probably plenty on this. So so we've had to work as a team. We've also had to work as a team with, we're working with the Sheriff's Department and as well as the police departments as well for Election Day security possibilities, where our 100-foot line is on all county buildings. We have them all mapped out, because there can be no campaigning, no anything within 100 feet of that pole building. And so I've had our GIS department map those out for all of our precincts, so we know where they are. And the city of St. Peter is working with their police department, as well as North Main Cato and our sheriff's department. Hopefully the day goes on uneventful and nobody needs any of that, but we still have to be kind of prepared for that kind of event too.
More questions? Oh, is Minnesota about the most generous state as far as giving a week for getting the ballots in after election day? Or don't you?
I can't answer that question because I don't know what other states have been doing.
Okay. Yes,
I
Tammy?
can't imagine they'd be much longer than a week, but
I think a lot of them are 2 days, aren't they?
Some are, but.
during the
they're-
primary, we were 3 days,
Okay.
and then it extended to 7 for the general.
I just want to share also with my peers here, I'm incredibly proud of you and your office. I don't sweat this. I really don't. I mean, it's one of those things that I know you're going to do the best job you possibly can with the resources and the reinforcement you have. So, like I said, I'm just incredibly proud of you personally, but I'm also proud of your staff and everything that they've done for all of our citizens. So thank you again very much for that.
Thank you. We've had our staff is great, but we've also had to hire temporary staff through the county. And I have some of the best temporary workers that I could ever ask for, to be honest. We have a great group that's working
Good.
and it's going well.
Pleased. Thank you.
Anything else? Anything else for us, Jackie?
I think that's probably enough.
It may be different tomorrow.
It will
Yeah.
be.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Ryan, I guess you're on deck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One item today regarding the CARES funding is a resolution to authorize funding for the schools. Back in August, the board approved a budget of $300,000 for our schools to provide CARES funding for acceptable expenditures under the federal guidance for the CARES money. That would include health, safety, and distance learning expenditures. I've reached out to the schools, both public and private in Nicollet County, and it certainly sounds like there is a need. Some are really struggling with really day-to-day changes that are occurring at the schools. So I would propose that the board approve the attached resolution. I've also included here the information that we discussed at the workshop last week regarding the school funding criteria. That includes the acceptable expenditures, providing documentation for those expenditures, and also including their total number of students that live in Nicollet County. We'll see what the total request would be when it comes in, and if it exceeds what we have budgeted, I'd probably recommend approval of a per pupil ratio across the board, so everybody gets some funding. So we'll see what the total request is, but I anticipate a very good response from our 7 public school districts and 7 private and charter schools.
And our schools that have children from other counties, those kids we don't take care of.
So included for eligibility is the 7 public school districts that have district land or boundaries within Nicollet County, and then our 7 public and charter schools that are physically located here.
I'll move the resolution.
A motion and a second. Discussion? Call to,
Chair.
yes, Jack.
I'd like to ask Commissioner Morrow, because you've been at the lead on this, Terry, and working with school boards, obviously. So does this help on a temporary basis, or will it last longer for what these needs are in your estimation?
Good question.
Well, I would say that if, for example, on the health and safety supplies, those supplies obviously could be used beyond December, even though there's a December cutoff for the purchasing of that equipment. And similarly, with the internet access issues, which I believe that the school district would be trying to assist families that either cannot access or cannot afford the access for distance learning. And as we watch COVID numbers go up, we have to assume, in fact we're seeing it, that more and more districts are going to distance learning. So one would think that this would serve a need beyond December, both in the cleaning and in the internet world for school districts. I'll also say that as I talk to districts around the state, I think our county's done a really good job of meeting needs of businesses, meeting needs of organizations that need health and safety assistance, and at the same time helping our schools that are struggling with health and safety needs. So I'm really proud of the work we've done, and I know that there are districts around the state that would love to have had a similar partnership.
And if I could just follow up, Mr. Chair, so the schools did get other CARES Act monies, but these CARES Act monies allow us to give this aid, is that correct, Ryan?
Right, and under the application proposed here, the schools would certify that, these funds aren't being used to essentially double dip on other expenditures. They've already used CARES funding and ESRI and GEAR, or whatever the terms are, for funds that they received from the state. So this would be in addition, to cover really expenditures that they've incurred, through the date of the application back to March 1st. In the schools I've talked to, there's definitely a need. One public school has even indicated to me that they've had to dip into reserves and are looking at additional borrowing to start cash flowing. And like Commissioner Morrow said, this won't end December 1st like the CARES program does. The need is going to be there going forward. So hopefully we can kind of catch the schools up a little bit here on their cash flow needs for monies that they've had to spend already, and that will help them get through the winter then.
Or at least not let them go backwards.
Yes, Terry?
I want to be real clear, the schools aren't double dipping.
No.
They're finding multiple sources to
Right.
pay for
Right.
an amazing list of expenses, and the kind of the hidden part, Jack, on all of this is that schools' revenues are suffering at the same time because of, and understandably, the number of families have chosen to homeschool their child for the year.
Oh.
The need to double up on bus routes because you need to keep the social distancing on the buses. So a lot of expenses associated with this and loss of revenue associated with the pandemic. Even with our assistance, they're still not going to be made whole, but they'll be better off in
Right.
ways they can help their families and their kids.
Yeah, Commissioner Morrow is correct. From what I've heard, even with the funding they've received and potentially the county funding, it's been the health and safety expense and the transportation has been a real big one. They've had to essentially double their transportation budget without any time to really levy or budget for that. So
basically they're accessing other funds, not the other word that was used.
Right.
Yeah,
And that's fine.
no,
Yeah.
that's okay.
oh, the double dipping.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah. For all our funding, we just state that you can't use an expenditure and
Right.
receive money from multiple sources for it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, which we haven't had a problem with.
And I've also heard, Terry, that some parochial schools are getting more kids because parents, especially if they have small classroom size, they're getting more kids because they're coming from the public schools.
I think that's fair to say. I think that a number of our, at least in our area, a number of private schools saw an uptick, and they didn't always have the same access to assistance. So this is I think a good idea to help every school in the
Yes.
district and to base it on the students in the district, in the county.
And the county is where it's based, yes.
Well, it is ultimately about the kids.
Okay, Ryan, anything else? We need a resolution.
Just
Oh, you had a motion on the resolution.
That's right.
Kemp,
Yes.
Morrow,
Yes.
Lipke.
Yes.
Journal. Yes. All ayes.
Yes.
Okay, I guess it's down to me, huh? Hasn't been that busy. Rural Minnesota.
Got the county attorney.
Oh, I got her, well, she can go now, that's fine. I got her a little later.
Sorry, I thought you were gonna do it now.
Yes, county attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before the meeting, I did provide to each of the board members, as you deem appropriate to use a red ribbon. This is Red Ribbon Week. It is awareness of a chemical-free lifestyle for our youth. And so we have tried through the Adolescent Chemical Awareness Advocate Group that has started in Nicollet County to raise awareness with our schools for our students for living a chemically free lifestyle, and part of that is a red ribbon to help bring awareness of chemical free in these challenging times. As you've been discussing the challenges that schools have been facing, our youth are certainly facing a number of challenges of dealing and responding to the circumstances of COVID and isolation, et cetera, and we are seeing an increase across the board of chemical use against across many different groups.
So this is an effort to hopefully bring awareness to the need to maintain that chemical-free lifestyle, and resources that are available if you're struggling with those issues are out and available in our community for people to access, whether that be for chemical use or mental health services. There is availability of those services for people that are struggling. So hopefully people can reach out and use the services that we are advocating for and promoting. There's social information on our social media site and or call Human Services for assistance. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any questions for Michelle? Thank you, Michelle. Okay. I guess her chair's report hasn't been that busy. I had 2 Zoom meetings with the Rural Minnesota Energy Board. I guess their big thing is that there aren't enough transmission lines from southwestern Minnesota to the markets for the electricity, so the solar and wind, especially the wind, are slowing down. The solar and wind projects are slowing down there. And in the workshop. So, Terry?
Well, the Adolescent Chemical Wellness Group, the Aqua, and I just want to take 1 second to thank Michelle, because Michelle's really been a remarkable leader in those conversations and in those actions, and I want to thank you, Michelle, for all you've been doing. And to just reiterate the message Michelle's given, it's been really challenging to help kids when they're not in school. It's been, this group done remarkable work, but they can't do functions that bring kids together to offer them support. Or at least there have been challenges in doing so. So it's just one of those hidden problems that we can't always see the kids that we need to help because they're not in school, and they may, in some ways, drop off the radar. So I want to thank Michelle and her group for doing that. So Aqua, we all went to Public Works last weekend that had the workshop. The Local Assistance Council, similar issues, reaching out to adults with mental health challenges is difficult in this time. The workshop, and then Marie and I did the St. Peter liaison meeting.
Denny?
Let's see, I was able to participate in the AMC Designing for Online Engagement. We had a good time doing that, and we hosted on our final session about 60 of our fellow AMC members throughout the state, and so it was an excellent learning experience, and the contractor that was doing that for AMC did a really nice job with that. Obviously we had our department head meeting. I wasn't able to join you physically because I was in shut-in mode at that point. We had the Mental Health Advisory Board meeting, which Terry also attended. Brown Nicollet Community Health Executive Committee meeting, and here we are today. Thank you.
Marie?
I also had the Brown Nicollet Community Health Board Executive Committee meeting, Planning and Zoning meeting last Monday, Region 9 meeting last Wednesday, full commission, and then last Tuesday, the Region 9 revolving loan fund committee meeting. Region 9 has CARES dollars to put out through loans to businesses that apply, interest-free for 2 years, 2% thereafter. Quite the application process. Spent another afternoon at the food shelf, and then had the elected women Zoom meeting, which is always a good time. And that's it.
Jack?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We had the Greater Mankato Growth Meeting, our regular Traverse to Sioux meeting, Minnesota Valley Action Council, the workshop, and thank you, Terry, for mentioning that. We got to see all the plows and the new equipment to move snow, and then all of a sudden it snowed, right? So, we had a Maple meeting and today's county board meeting. Thank you.
Okay. For deems and expenses?
Move it.
Second.
Motion and second, any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Passes.
And just a reminder, we have our regional or district meeting the 7th, right?
November 6th.
Oh, 6th, I'm sorry, it was the Friday.
Yep.
Friday, November 6th, that's gonna be a Zoom meeting.
What time is that?
So it starts at 9.
9 to 11:30, I believe.
Yes, I believe that's correct, or at least that's what's scheduled for it. So you should have already received your notice on it, because there'll be a Zoom attachment. Usually comes out a little closer to the event. So
Day or
you
two.
should get that in your email. Plus, there's also, the annual meeting is gonna be a Zoom event also, and I just don't remember the date right now.
December
It's
something.
December something,
Yeah, it's that same week, it's just gonna be a
Right.
lot shorter.
right.
All right, motion to adjourn.
Move. Second.
Motion and second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No, passes. Okay, call the Drainage Authority meeting to order.
Move the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion and second on the consent agenda, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No, passes.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and second to adjourn, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No, passes. Thank you.